excuse me, somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it.
So we've seen how the Great American Solar Eclipses of 2017 and 2024, along with the events tied to them, form a pattern, a divine signal pointing to the exact moments of Trump's implied godhood. Trump's claims of being the chosen one, along with everything else that happened that day, and the Second Coming introduction by Mo Brooks, align perfectly with the first great eclipse date, pulsing every 2 years like a heartbeat from the start of God's signature in the sky. But there's one more eclipse we need to talk about, one that sits right at the center of this celestial signal. It's the total solar eclipse of December 14th, 2020, a date that's not just astronomically significant, but politically and spiritually loaded. This eclipse occurred exactly midway between the two great eclipses, 1,211 days after the first eclipse and 1,211 days before the second eclipse. Perfect symmetry. That very same day, the Electoral College officially affirmed Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election. The symmetry of the confirmation of Joe Biden's victory and the occurrence of another eclipse midway between the two great eclipses is striking. Another very strange thing that occurred on the date of this eclipse was the administering of the first dose of COVID vaccine. Now, we've talked about eclipses being general celestial signs, but one thing many Mesopotamian cultures around the ancient Israelites believed they could signify is the death of kings, as well as other calamities. Cuneiform tablets from ancient Assyria showed they believed so assertively that solar eclipses meant the death of the king of that area within 100 days that they practiced a ritual called Sharpuki, literally meaning substitute king in Akkadian. In this ritual, the king would abdicate and live in the palace as, quote, the farmer. A condemned criminal or someone else would take his place on the throne and die within 100 days by assassination, thus fulfilling the prophecy. This is crazy to me because it's like they're trying to trick God. If they were right about what they think the eclipse meant, the king is essentially saying, "Don't look at me, God. I'm just a lowly peasant farmer." And he would return to the throne once the substitute king was killed. Researchers even have records of messages sent to the farmer asking when he wanted the substitute king to be killed. In one interesting case from 1800 BC, the true king actually died while playing the farmer after having sipped a broth that was too hot. And the gardener, Enlil Bani, who was the substitute king, got to remain king for 24 years. Tablet 20 of the Babylonian Enuma Anu Enlil states that lunar eclipses could spell danger for kings. While these texts aren't God's word and shouldn't be taken as such, they come from cultures like Assyria and Babylon, which closely interacted with the ancient Hebrews who wrote the Old Testament and were likely influenced by their views. Both Assyria and Babylon conquered Israel at some point, taking Israelites into captivity. I found these rituals and beliefs around eclipses while researching the topic and thought it was intriguing. But more importantly, the idea of a king's death being signified by eclipses lines up with the idea of celestial signals pointing to God's divine plan. I believe this midway eclipse signifies a pause in Trump's prophetic purpose and his metaphorical death, a time where he would go away only to ascend back to office years later. On that day, he was officially what they call lame duck and was on his way out of office. His power was fading. Within a month from the eclipse and confirmation of his defeat in the election, we would see the infamous moment which many people, even his own allies in politics and the media, saw at the time as his political death, January 6, 2021. The day in which Trump's speech at the Stop the Steal rally preceded a mob of his supporters breaching the U.S. Capitol, clashing with police, and halting the ceremonial certification of the election. The violent incursion caused chaos, injuries, and a temporary lockdown of Congress.
I'm Congressman Mo Brooks from Alabama's 5th Congressional District, and I've got a message that I need you to take to your heart and take back home, and along the way, stop at the Capitol. Now, our ancestors sacrificed their blood, their sweat, their tears, their fortunes, and sometimes their lives to give us, their descendants, an America that is the greatest nation in world history. So I have a question for you. Are you willing to do the same? Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
Let's have trial by combat.
Make no mistake about it, they do not want you to be heard. But my friends, when I look out this crowd, I can confidently say, this crowd has the voice of lions.
We won in a landslide. This was a landslide. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Multiple capital entry! Multiple capital entry!
It's over! You better run, cops!
It can't be overstated how politically damaging this was for Trump at the time. While it's true some Capitol protesters were peaceful and got caught up in the federal government's harsh prosecutions, which sought to make an example out of all participants of the riot who stepped foot in the Capitol, these outliers don't define the event's violent reality. Plenty of people did just orderly wander through the Capitol. That's a fact. But to call this an orderly tour would be an unfair categorization of this day as a whole, despite this argument being made by Representative Andrew Clyde and others.
There was no insurrection, and to call it an insurrection, in my opinion, is a bold-faced lie. Watching the TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through Statuary Hall showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes taking videos and pictures. You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
On the other side of that coin, Trump's pardons since returning to office made no distinction between those who were peaceful and those who assaulted roughly 140 police officers.
What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to the people in Portland that destroyed that city?
But sir, my question is on those.
What's going to happen to the people that tried to burn
rioters who assaulted officers.
You have to
would you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You would pardon those?
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just they were convicted by a very tough system. How come the people that tried to burn down Minneapolis, how come the people that took over a large percentage of Seattle, how come nothing happened to them? How come the people
But sir, we're talking about people that were seen beating officers with flagpoles, dragging them down the stairs. They're on video. Have you seen that video, sir?
Oh, really? Well,
you would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was protesting. They shot her in the face.
You said you didn't honor first responders today, but you pardoned hundreds of people who assaulted first responders. Why did you do that? You were going to meet with first responders today, but you pardoned people who assaulted first responders.
No, I pardoned people that were assaulted themselves. They were assaulted by our government. I pardoned J6 people who were assaulted by our government. That's who assaulted, and they were treated unfairly. There's never been a group of people in this country, outside of maybe one instance that I can think of, but I won't get into it, that were treated more horribly than the people of J6. So, no, I didn't assault. They didn't assault. They were assaulted. And what I did was a great thing for humanity. They were treated very, very unfairly. There's never been an incident like this.
Virtually all J6 defendants were pardoned or had their sentences commuted, barring technical discrepancies such as cases under review. This includes Shane Jenkins, who disassembled wooden furniture for makeshift weapons and hurled 9 different objects at police. Thomas Webster, who assaulted an officer with a metal flagpole and attempted to rip off his gas mask. Stephen Cappuccio, who attempted to rip off an officer's mask and pinned him in a door frame. And David Dempsey, conspiracy who was given one of the longest sentences and climbed over other rioters like human scaffolding to reach the front of the crowd before leading a prolonged attack using his hands, flagpoles, broken furniture, pepper spray, and quote, anything else he could get his hands on. Pardoning these people is something even J.D. Vance was against.
January 6th pardons, President Trump says there's a process. Where is the line drawn on who will and wouldn't be considered for a pardon?
I think it's very simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there, but we're very much committed to seeing the equal administration of law. And there are a lot of people, we think, in the wake of January the 6th who were prosecuted unfairly. We need to rectify that.
If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned.
It's especially ironic to me that some of the people who downplayed the violence on January 6th then went on to call videos of protesters simply chanting and holding signs in Trump Tower violent when they clearly weren't. Trump had claimed he was the true victor since election night, while most states were still counting, some not over 50%. Biden was even ahead when he said it.
Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight, and a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people, and we won't stand for it. We were getting ready for a big celebration. We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it.
The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. We're going to have Antifa crazy, the media crazy, the courts are crazy, and Trump's going to be sitting there mocking, tweeting shit out, you lose. I'm the winner. I'm the king. And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner.
As early as December 19th, he was asking people to come protest at the Capitol on January 6th, tweeting, "Be there, will be wild." Trump finished his speech at the Ellipse that day at 1:10 p.m. This was 17 minutes after the first violence broke out at the Capitol at 12:53 p.m., with pro-Trump rioters overrunning the first set of barriers outside the Capitol. Some of these were members of the Proud Boys, the far-right group which Trump asked to, quote, "stand back and stand by" at the debate, a slogan which would then be plastered on their merch and sold.
What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white supremacists.
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by.
Trump was told at 1:21 the Capitol was under attack. 15 minutes after his speech at 1:25 p.m., he would make it to a private dining room near the Oval Office, where he would stay until 4 p.m. According to testimony from White House aides, he spent the afternoon watching Fox News coverage of the spectacle at the Capitol. The White House photographer was told not to take pictures of Trump during this period. 187 minutes would pass from the time Trump finished his speech to the first instance in which he asked the mob to go home in a video posted to Twitter. 3 hours and 7 minutes.
Our hearings have shown the many ways in which President Trump tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power in the days leading up to January 6th. With each step of his plan, he betrayed his oath of office and was derelict in his duty. Early that afternoon, President Trump instructed tens of thousands of supporters at and near the Ellipse rally, a number of whom he knew were armed with various types of weapons, to march to the Capitol. After telling the crowd to march multiple times, he promised he would be with them and finished his remarks at 1:10 p.m. By this time, the vice president was in the Capitol. The joint session of Congress to certify Joe Biden's victory was underway, and the Proud Boys and other rioters had stormed through the first barriers and begun the attack. From the time when President Trump ended his speech until the moment when he finally told the mob to go home, a span of 187 minutes, more than 3 hours.
At 1:45 p.m., the D.C. Metropolitan Police declared a riot.
We're going to give riot warning. We're going to try and get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot.
49 hours declaring it a riot.
At 2 p.m., rioters breached the outer barricade, pushed to the steps, and make their way into the building. 10 minutes later, they would begin breaking through the doors and windows of the Senate.
We're real American citizens who are sick of this, and we're making it knowing that we're sick of it. Okay?
30 years.
Would you? Huh?
And I've never had people like this.
Say again?
I've been in law enforcement in Texas for 30 years.
Talk a little louder. That's because you've never seen corruption like we have seen this last month.
At 2:13 p.m., an immediate recess of the Senate was called as the Secret Service immediately evacuated Vice President Mike Pence and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. Trump had been watching coverage of the Capitol for roughly 45 minutes at this point and had yet to make any statements to stop the violence. At 2:24, 11 minutes after the crowd entered the Capitol building and the Senate was recessed, nearly 45 minutes after a riot was declared, Trump sent out his first tweet since the riot began, saying Mike Pence had let them down for not going along with Eastman's plan to give Trump the election. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. This tweet came without a single call for peace. This plan by Trump's legal advisor, John Eastman, involved Mike Pence unilaterally rejecting key states' electoral votes based on Trump's claims of fraud, conspiracy theories, and perceived impropriety. This would result in neither candidate reaching the necessary 270 electoral votes pursuant to the 12th Amendment, which would send the decision to the House, where each state gets a delegate based on which party controls their House. In this scenario, if everyone voted along party lines, 26 states would have gone to Trump, a majority, giving him the victory. States would have already deliberated and given these votes the okay by the time they got to Pence. And Pence's legal counsel, Gregory Jacob, advised him this move would be illegal and ultimately lose in court.
Did John Eastman ever admit, or in front of the president, that his proposal would violate the Electoral Count Act?
I believe he did on the 4th.
Under immense pressure from Trump, Pence went with the legal advice from his counsel. Trump's 2:24 p.m. tweet, which came without a single call to be peaceful, sicked an angry mob of his supporters on Pence, who about 15 minutes prior began chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," at the entrance to the building, while a mock gallows was set up outside.
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution.
White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson testified to being told by then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows that Trump didn't want to do anything about the riot, and that he agreed with the chanting rioters 10 minutes before the tweet was sent.
You worried about him during that siege? Were you worried about his safety?
No, I thought he was well protected, and I had heard that he was in good shape. Mm-hmm. No, because I had heard he was in very good shape. But no,
you heard those chants. That was terrible. I mean, those,
he could have. Well, the people were very angry.
They're saying, "Hang Mike
Because
Pence."
it's common sense, John. It's common sense that you're supposed to protect. How can you, if you know a vote is fraudulent, right? Yeah. How can you pass on a fraudulent vote to Congress?
On top of all the public pressure, Trump was also pushing Pence behind the scenes, telling him that morning that he could go down in history as, quote, a patriot or a pussy. Something Trump said he wouldn't dispute when asked about it later.
There was a report, excuse my language, not mine, it was in the report, that you talked to him that morning and you said you could be a patriot or you can be a Did you really say that, or is that a incorrect?
I wouldn't dispute it.
Really?
I wouldn't dispute it.
Cassidy Hutchinson also testified that Trump was angry that attendance at the eclipse wasn't at capacity and demanded magnetometers be removed so people with weapons could get in. After being warned that Secret Service was denying entry to people who tried to pass through magnetometers armed with guns, bear spray, knives, and brass knuckles, Trump delivered new instructions to those working the checkpoints. Quote, "I don't effing care that they have weapons. They are not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. midway. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Trump's actions and lack thereof by this point led to his chief of staff Mark Meadows' phone blowing up non-stop with texts from Trump's closest allies in politics and the media, as well as his own family, begging Trump to call off the mob and ask everyone to leave. I can't imagine having that phone during all this. I get stressed having 5 or more unread messages. His phone was buzzing multiple times per minute. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene texted Meadows 4 minutes after the Pence tweet saying, "Mark, I was just told there's an active shooter on the first floor of the Capitol. Please tell the president to calm people. This isn't the way to solve anything." 3 minutes later, Fox News host Laura Ingraham would send 3 texts saying, "Hey Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy and playing into every stereotype. We lose all credibility against the BLM/Antifa crowd if things go south." At 2:38 p.m., Trump would put out a second tweet, which to his credit did ask people to be peaceful, but did not ask anyone to leave. "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." The crowd in the Lower West Terrace tunnel entrance was crushing police officer Daniel Hodges in the doorframe at this very time. Subsequent texts would show Trump's allies viewed this tweet and the next as insufficient for not asking everyone to leave while the violence was ongoing. Mario Parker at 2:47 asked, "Is POTUS going to take the podium to quell this unrest?" At 2:53, his son Donald Trump Jr. texted and said, "He's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough." At 3:04, Politico reporter Nancy Cook asked Mark Meadows, "Are you with POTUS right now?" Hearing he is in the dining room watching this on TV. Then, is he going to say anything to de-escalate apart from the tweet? Republican attorney and Trump's former chief of staff, Reince Priebus, texted Meadows at 3:09 in all caps, "Tell them to go home." At 3:13 p.m., Trump would put out one final tweet before his video address, again asking for peace while the violence was ongoing, and not asking the crowd to leave the Capitol. "I am asking everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you." Text messages would continue flowing after this tweet, specifically asking Trump to ask the crowd to leave. At 3:31, Fox News host Sean Hannity texted and said, "Can he make a statement? I saw the tweet. Ask people to peacefully leave the Capitol." At 3:58, Fox News host Brian Kilmeade texted Meadows saying, "Please get him on TV, destroying everything you guys have accomplished." At 4:05, Don Jr. texted again saying, "We need an Oval address. He has to lead now. It's gone too far and gotten out of hand." Plenty more texts came throughout the day that I haven't covered. Here are most of them on screen now if you'd like to pause and take a look. One interesting thing to note is that the earliest plans to blame Antifa, based on no evidence at all, began forming from Trump's allies' texts, with MTG saying, "We think they are Antifa, dressed like Trump supporters." Don Jr. saying, "I'm not convinced these are Trump supporters either, by the way," and Justin Miller even suggesting Trump blamed them in a tweet. No definitive connection has ever been made between the rioters arrested and Antifa. One of the closest connections possible, John Earl Sullivan, someone accused by Rudy Giuliani and Trump's defense attorney of being Antifa, was included in Trump's pardon. Kind of an odd thing when Trump allegedly thinks he's the real bad guy, unlike his supporters. He had previously been involved with both BLM and Proud Boys events, but was not affiliated with them and was denounced by both groups as a provocateur. At 4:07 p.m., after 187 minutes of violence at the Capitol, after Trump had concluded his speech, Trump would release a video from the Rose Garden finally asking the crowd to go home, as his family, media supporters, and political allies had been pleading via text to Mark Meadows. White House aides had drafted him a professional script for the moment with a direct and concise call for protesters to leave the Capitol. A script which avoided repeating the stolen election claim that had ignited the mob and made no mention of praising the protesters who at that moment were fighting police officers and smashing windows. I urge all of my supporters to do exactly as 99.9% of them have already been doing. Express their passions and opinions peacefully. I am asking you to leave the Capitol region now and go home in a peaceful way. Trump didn't want it and instead went off the cuff doing exactly that, opening his message with the stolen election claim and lavishing praise on the protesters.
His staff had prepared a script for him to read, but he refused to use it. The president was urged to stick to this script, but he spoke off the cuff.
Ultimately, these remarks that we're looking at here in Exhibit 25 were not the remarks that the president delivered in the Rose Garden. Do you know why the president decided not to use these?
I don't know, sir. No, I do not know why.
Did the president use any written remarks to your knowledge, or did he just go off the cuff?
To my knowledge, it was off the cuff, sir.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel.
The next day, January 7th, Trump recorded another video address, this time aiming to sound more presidential from the podium. Outtakes, released by the J6 committee, revealed his true mindset and that Trump still didn't want to concede that the election was over.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack yesterday, and to those who broke the law, you will pay. You do not represent our movement. You do not represent our country. And if you broke the law, you can't say that. I'm not going. I already said you will pay. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defied the seat of justice. It's defiled, right? See, I can't see it very well. Okay, I'll do this. I'm going to do this. Let's go. But this election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
But Congress is certified. Now Congress is
Yeah,
certified.
right.
Now Congress
I didn't say over, so let me see. Go to the paragraph before.
The point of all of this is to show how bad this was seen at the time. The text showed that even his inner circle was panicking during the riot, even while trying to figure out how to deflect blame. Others directly placed the blame, at least partially, on Trump. The day after the riot saw many big-name resignations from important roles in the administration, citing the violence from the day before as the reason. Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao resigned, saying the Capitol riot deeply disturbed her in a way she couldn't set aside. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos resigned and said to Trump in her resignation letter, "There is no mistaking the impact your rhetoric had on the situation." Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Matthews, Chief of Staff to First Lady Melania Trump, and dozens of others resigned over the next 2 days. Trump was a sinking ship and everyone wanted off. Trump was also rapidly removed from numerous platforms. Some he had almost no affiliation with. The most famous of these is Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, but even lesser known platforms he barely, if at all, used, such as Snapchat, Stripe, Shopify, Twitch, and others, banned the president. This event also led to his second impeachment on January 13th, making him the first and only U.S. president to be impeached twice. He only narrowly avoided conviction on February 13th by 10 votes, with more votes in favor of conviction from his own party than any other impeached president had ever received. Some senators even explicitly said they voted in his favor based on technicalities. 29 senators said they can't try an ex-president, and 3 said they can but shouldn't. Mitch McConnell said Trump is constitutionally not eligible for conviction as a former president. The immediate fallout from the general public and Trump's political and media allies demonstrate the fact many people thought Trump's political career had to be over. It was dead. Many Republicans condemned him directly for the riot, and Joe Rogan even said immediately after that he doubted Trump had a chance to win again in 2024 after what happened.
There's no question. None. That President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day.
And they have doubts that the election was legitimate, and it gives this country this extraordinary crisis of confidence, which is very dangerous because democracy is very fragile, and it's not held together by elections. Democracy is held together by people's confidence in the election and their willingness to abide by its results. My entire life, I have lived with and next to people who came to America because their country was chaotic and their country was unsafe. What I saw today, what we have seen, looks more like those countries than the extraordinary nation that I am privileged to call home. I think politics has made us crazy. Everybody in this country has lost their minds on politics. And we have forgotten that America is not a government. America is not a president. America is not a Congress. Let me tell you what America is. America is your family.
There's like a video of them hitting the cop with flags and shit.
Yep.
It's like, what the fuck? Like, what? How did that happen? How did it deteriorate to that?
I know, man. It's really sad to me that kind of thing happened. And then you have these fucking cowards, Rudy Giuliani, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, all of these cowards. They are allowed to stand on their pulpit and say these things like they're tough, but they're nowhere around to support these folks in the first place. And they're sending them into the battle, and now they will comfortably join the ranks of their members of Congress, while these other people are going to go to jail and have these charges, which they should have, of course. But these leaders who manipulated them, there's no consequences to them. I mean, I think that's the real crime.
Yeah, well, we'll see if there's consequences, because I have a feeling there will be for Trump. I think this is going to be the end.
Yeah, well, we'll see if there's consequences, because I have a feeling there will be for Trump. I think this is going to be the end.
I really do, because I think there's very little chance that he's going to run in 2024 after this, because a lot of people were hoping for that. A lot of his supporters were hoping for that. But after this, I don't even think.
Yeah, I think the useful idiot is done. I mean, I think like the people like Mitch McConnell and those people, they don't have no more use for him, so he's done.
Despite this, all three of those examples, as well as nearly everyone significant on his side, who even remotely called Trump out for January 6th, would later go on to endorse him in 2024, and most completely flip the narrative surrounding the violence that took place that day. Trump's return to politics and ascension back to the presidency mirrored Jesus' resurrection and ascension. This is but one way he mimics this aspect of the life of Jesus, but many other aspects exist as well. The Bible in Revelation 13 verse 3 through 4 speaks of the beast suffering an apparently fatal head wound, from which there is a miraculous recovery. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Some interpretations of this verse view the wound as a political wound or loss of power rather than a literal one. In this interpretation, we see this in the election loss of 2020, made even more astounding by how finished people thought Trump's political career was after the events of January 6th. Even far-right white nationalist Nick Fuentes, who was there on January 6th and has only ever said it was awesome, recognized how astounding Trump's political comeback was.
Let's not forget that on January 6, 2021, his supporters, including myself, stormed the Capitol. For legal purposes, I'll say I'd never entered the building, which I didn't. But rhetorically speaking, okay, his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in order to stop the transfer of power from the Democrats to the Republicans, just like the media said. The media said he won't admit that he will concede defeat. They said, when we do the election, he must swear that he will affirm the results, because what if he doesn't give up power? And he almost didn't. He never conceded defeat. He refused to concede throughout every constitutional procedural deadline. He challenged the result everywhere, summoned his supporters. And then at the last deadline, he summoned all of his legions to the capital city, where he gave a speech outside the White House and directed them to protest the result outside the Capitol, where it was being tabulated. And they broke in. And now, don't get me wrong. That is a whole other conversation, whether it was organic, whether there were bad actors involved, whether it was a plot. That's an altogether separate discussion. It is true that whether there were some agitators or none, and I think there were some, his real supporters did breach the Capitol. They did break the windows. They did enter. They did beat cops. Okay, that happened. And they sent in the cops, the riot police, to break it up. The DOJ arrested thousands of them. And it was after that that Trump got elected in he won the popular vote in a landslide after that.
One thing to note is that Hebrew prophecy in both the Old and New Testaments often plays out in typologies, where partial fulfillments of prophecy occur many times as foreshadowing before the true complete fulfillment. This is called typological or progressive fulfillment, where a prophecy has multiple layers, often playing out in patterns or types before reaching the ultimate fulfillment. One such example is the Passover lamb in Exodus 12 being a foreshadowing of the sacrifice of Jesus. God was plaguing Egypt with the death of everyone's firstborn, and in order for God to pass over and spare a household, they had to slay a male lamb without blemish and spread the blood over and around the doorpost. This foreshadowed Jesus' sacrifice as a man without blemish, without sin, for the remission of humanity's sin and the sparing from God's judgment. Another example of typology from the Bible is the story of Nebuchadnezzar, who demanded a golden image of him be worshipped by all in the land at the threat of death. This is a typology of the man from Revelation we call the Antichrist. Nebuchadnezzar is actually the strongest typology of the Antichrist in the Old Testament, and just like Trump, he loses the throne for a period before returning to power. The Bible describes in Daniel chapter 4 that Nebuchadnezzar was extremely prideful, much like Donald Trump, and for this reason God strips him of the kingdom. The Bible says, "The king spake and said, Is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee." God then curses him with madness, and he lives in the field like oxen eating grass and his hair growing wild. 7 years later, God returns him to the kingdom. Trump, like Antichrist typology Nebuchadnezzar, lost power before returning to the presidency. On another less serious but interesting note, Trump was just bragging the other day how much he knows about grass.
I'm very good at grass because I have a lot of golf courses all over the place. I know more about grass than any human being, I think, anywhere in the world. And we're going to be regrassing all of your parks, all brand new sprinkler systems, the best that you can buy, just like the Augusta. No, it'll look like Augusta. It'll look like, more importantly, Trump National Golf Club. That's even better. But we're going to have all brand new, beautiful grass.
King David represents a type of the Messiah, being a shepherd, a king, and a conqueror. So while some see Trump's astonishing political comeback as fulfillment of the Revelation 13:3 prophecy with recovery from a political wound, I personally do not think it is, though it could be a foreshadowing of the prophecy, and it is most certainly one of the ways Trump's role as a counterfeit Messiah is shown by mimicking the death and resurrection of Jesus. On March 13th, 2022, 60 Minutes Australia put out a short documentary titled The Second Coming of Donald Trump, More Clear Messianic Imagery. 2 years later, on February 4th, 2024, they would put out another mini documentary titled The Resurrection of Donald Trump. These titles being chosen further demonstrate how Trump's political recovery was seen as messianic and hint at his role as a counterfeit Messiah. There's even examples going back decades that hint at this role. In May 2004, Razor magazine, a now defunct men's lifestyle and culture magazine, had an exclusive interview with Donald Trump, and this was the cover. Trump sitting with a halo over his head and the title, The Resurrection and Ascension of Donald Trump. Even back in 2004, there were signs. Oddly enough, in terms of being predictive, this magazine was also Volume 4, Issue 5. 4 and 5, like how Trump became the 45th president. Also notice the sign he's making with his hands. This symbol where all 5 fingers meet and make a downward facing triangle is one traditionally ascribed by conspiracy theorists to elite secret societies like the Illuminati. This is the same hand sign Eric Trump was making at Trump's second inauguration when his wife Laura Trump seemed to pat him and tell him to stop. One of the funniest jokes I heard about this was that it was like he had just been inducted into the secret society and didn't realize you were supposed to be subtle with the gang signs. Some of the more conspiracy-driven Trump supporters tried to defend this specific hand sign as being an inversion of the typical Illuminati triangle hand sign often made by celebrities, representative of the pyramid and the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. They say the version Trump is making on the Razor magazine cover and that Eric made at inauguration is upside down because it is symbolic they are working against the secret societies or deep state. This is preposterous, as plenty of of other elite figures not on Trump's side make the hand signal, and the sign is even included in famous occultist Aleister Crowley's books as the water sign in the greater ritual of the pentagram. It's also featured on the Deep Agent card in the Illuminati card game, as well as on one of his NFTs. The Illuminati dollar bill pyramid was even featured in the background on stage at the 2024 RNC in Milwaukee, where Trump accepted his nomination. The inverted triangle is also used as a hand symbol in Freemasonry by the Grandmaster Masons. Lastly, it's symbolic of the downward-facing triangle built into Trump Tower, which displays the number of the beast, 666, with the outer band of bushes on each line of the triangle containing 6 bushes, 6 on top, 6 on the left, and 6 on the right. Trump Tower is also 666 feet tall. Google will say 663 feet, but the original documents could be found on nyc-architecture.com, showing 203 meters, or 666.01 feet tall.
Down the pathological liar, lawless, vile, arrogant king of the north, who comes from the west speaking great things and pompous words against God, who honors Apollo on the 66th floor of the 666-foot tower with a 666 triangle signal sign. It has followers who like to deny, but I pray they wake up before the sun goes black and the stars fall from the sky. Not of the king of fierce countenance, who is given a crown and understands dark senses, denier of Christ's forgiveness. The fake peacemaker, who was accepted as a prince of peace, who changes times and laws and came to power by flattery. The stout little horn who divides the land for gain and causes, to seek to prosper, but as according to his own will destroys anyone who gets in his way, as if he make war with him. He has farmers like to deny, but I pray you wake up before the sun goes black and the stars fall from the sky.
It's nothing but a nonsense QAnon offense to say Trump is working against the elites, not with them. To use Gen Z slang, it's copium. It's cope. Whether it's the Masonic handshake, 666, 666 over the eye, the steepling inverted triangle, or devil horns, Trump frequently makes the hand signs. Like George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream. Because you have to be asleep to believe it.
While Trump's return to political power against all odds mirrors the resurrection story and could be seen as a sort of symbolic hint or foreshadowing of the head wound prophecy, there's one event which stands out as a perfect match for the literal fulfillment of Revelation 13:3, the Butler assassination attempt.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast.